welcome to the deep dive. Okay, we're jumping straight in today. We've got a stack of really urgent reports coming out of Ukraine. We're going to be zeroing in on a pretty significant development, the infrastructure war, specifically energy infrastructure.
Yes, it feels like a critical moment.
Our mission really is to try and cut through some of the noise. We want to analyze the scale, the intent behind it all, and the counter moves. We're talking about what officials are saying is the biggest, most concentrated attack of the war on natural gas facilities, specifically the ones run by Ukraine's state company, Naftogaz.
And this is so important because it feels like a shift, doesn't it? It's moving beyond maybe typical military targets. This looks like the strategic weaponization of infrastructure, gas heating, right before winter really bites. We really need to look at, why these targets, why now, what does it signal?
Okay, let's start with the scale, because the numbers being reported, they're pretty startling. Ukrainian officials are confirming Russia launched what they're calling its largest single attack of the whole conflict against these Naftogaz sites.
Right, and if you look at just the sheer volume of air weapons, it's massive. Ukraine's Air Force tracked 381 incoming drones and missiles total across the country. Just that volume alone suggests, a lot of planning, a high level of coordination from the Russian side.
Exactly. But the focus, it seems, was really tight. The specific attack on the gas infrastructure, they're saying 35 missiles, many of them ballistic, plus 60 drones. And these are hitting mainly in the northeast, in Kharkiv, and also central Ukraine, the Poltava region. And that difference, between a drone and a ballistic missile, when you're aiming at fixed infrastructure like this, that's really key, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Ballistic missiles, they come in fast, steep trajectory. Very, very hard for air defenses to intercept compared to, say, cruise missiles or the slower drones. So if you want to guarantee hitting something solid like a gas processing plant, that kinetic energy, that speed, it maximizes the chance of causing what Naftogaz's CEO, Serhiy Koretsky, actually called critical damage.
Right, critical damage. And when we talk about that kind of damage to gas extraction, processing plants, what does that actually mean in practical terms? Is this like fixing a power line, or is it much harder?
Oh, it's exponentially harder. No, these aren't just storage tanks you can patch up easily. You're talking complex machinery, compressors, separators, specialized pipes, stuff that's all integrated. Damage here often needs, very specific parts, maybe foreign-made components, specialist engineers, and the time to fix it. It can stretch into months, easily, which seriously degrades their ability to provide heat and power through the winter. That's the vulnerability being hit.
Which sets up this really intense battle of narratives, doesn't it, about the purpose behind these strikes. Let's try and unpack what each side is saying. So from the Ukrainian side, the reaction was immediate. Total condemnation. Focused right on the civilian impact. The Naftogaz CEO, Koretsky, he didn't mince words. He called it, quote, deliberate terror against civilian facilities.
And that specific claim is key, isn't it? He insisted it has no military purpose. The argument being, its only aim was to mess up the heating curtain, basically deprive ordinary Ukrainians of warmth.
Yeah, and that message came from the top too. Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko confirmed it, saying the intent is, quote, terrorizing civilians and trying to disrupt the heating season. For Kyiv, this is clearly Russia weaponizing the cold, again.
But then you look at the Russian side, their defense ministry puts out a statement, and it paints a completely different picture. Military justification. They said they launched a mass strike, yes, but claimed the targets were Ukraine's military-industrial complex and the gas and energy infrastructure that supports it.
Okay. So they're deliberately linking the gas infrastructure directly to Ukraine's military capability. That's their justification. And they finished by saying all designated targets were hit, claiming success.
Right. That specific phrasing, military-industrial complex, it's how Russia provides that layer of military necessity, even when the consequences are overwhelmingly civilian. But if you connect the dots, look at the bigger picture. This pattern, it's tragically familiar. Russia has hit Ukraine's power grid hard each winter since the full invasion started. It's a known strategy to pressure the civilian population, weaponizing winter, as Ukraine calls it.
But what seems crucial now is the type of target shifting, maybe expanding beyond just the power grid itself. Sources are also confirming a big recent escalation in targeting the rail network too, which is vital, obviously, not just for people, but for moving military gear, supplies.
Exactly. Hitting gas processing and rail logistics, it signals a more calculated move, perhaps, to paralyze the country's sort of dual-use backbone. You disrupt heat, you disrupt transport, you degrade the whole national ability to resist. Even if the targets are far from any front line, the calculation seems to be make survival itself unbearable.
Okay, let's move beyond those high-level claims for a second. Let's focus on the specific human costs, the tangible impacts that are detailed in the sources. Because even if the targets are industrial, the effects, they spill over. Particularly in that Poltava region, reports confirmed injuries, including an 8-year-old child, 2 women as well. That's the immediate kinetic effect near populated areas. Yes, the immediate human cost. And then there's the ripple effect on, well, cultural heritage, which kind of underscores the claim that these strikes aren't purely precise or military. One blast in Poltava apparently was strong enough to shatter about half the windows in the historic St. Nicholas Church. And this church is listed, an architectural monument. So that kind of collateral damage, it complicates the narrative that this is all strictly military. And this wasn't happening in a vacuum, was it? This whole incident occurred during a really tense week geopolitically. What else was going on that adds to the picture?
Yeah, the context is really important here. The sources mention, for instance, the Czech election picking off, which matters because, well, the outcome there could potentially weaken Czech support for Ukraine, which could affect the NATO consensus.
Okay.
And at the same time, you had President Zelensky issuing a really stark warning about Russian drone activity near Chernobyl and also near Europe's biggest nuclear plant, Zaporizhia. So it's this incredibly fraught moment where infrastructure, security gas, nuclear, everything is suddenly right at the forefront. Very tense.
Okay, so when a country faces this kind of deep strategic attack on its energy system, the obvious question is, how do you respond? How do you hit back? Let's turn to Ukraine's counter-strategy, because this involves long-range drones, domestically produced ones, hitting deep inside Russia.
Right, and this is where you really see that asymmetric warfare idea in practice. Ukraine can't match Russia's missile arsenal or air force, obviously, but it can use these relatively cheaper long-range drones to create strategic effects far, far behind enemy lines. And the targets they chose for retaliation, they're very telling.
They certainly are. Sources confirm specific hits on Russia's own essential economic infrastructure. And the distances, they're just huge. One confirmed drone strike hit the Orsk oil refinery. That's what, 1,400 kilometers? About 900 miles from the Ukrainian border.
Just think about that range, 900 miles.
Yeah, I mean, that's like launching something from Paris and hitting, I don't know, deep into North Africa.
Yeah.
And hitting a specific industrial site.
And they went even further. Other Ukrainian drones apparently hit the Azot chemical plant. That's one of Russia's biggest fertilizer producers. It's in Berezniki. That's over 1,500 kilometers, maybe 930 miles east of Moscow. Operations were briefly stopped there. The geographical reach itself, it's not just impressive engineering, it's sending a powerful strategic message.
So what's the thinking there? Hitting a huge fertilizer plant like Azot, or a distant refinery like Orsk. Why those targets instead of, say, closer military bases?
Well, the intent seems to be denial and pressure. You hit these vital economic hubs, oil, refining, fertilizers critical for their agriculture and exports. You put financial pressure, logistical pressure on the Russian state itself, far from the actual fighting. And crucially, it forces Russia to pull back valuable air defense systems, away from the front lines maybe, to protect these domestic assets, which in turn degrades their capability elsewhere. It's a classic strategy, really, making the defender choose what they can afford to protect and what they have to leave vulnerable.
So it becomes this continuous reciprocal war on infrastructure, played out over these vast distances. And we should note, the reports also mention Russia's defense ministry saying they shot down 20 Ukrainian drones overnight, mostly over the Black Sea. So both sides are clearly operating these remote assets at a high tempo across huge areas.
Absolutely. It's a defining feature now.
So what does this all really mean for you listening? I think the key takeaway from this deep dive is pretty clear. This conflict has really decisively escalated into a deep infrastructure war. Natural gas, critical energy. These are now prime military targets.
Yeah.
And it's forcing both sides to demonstrate and use these significant deep strike capabilities. It fundamentally changes the map of the conflict.
Yeah, and it leaves us with a really important question to think about, especially as we head towards winter. If Ukraine's goal is survival against this weaponization of cold, and their counter-move involves hitting essential economic infrastructure 1,500 kilometers inside Russia successfully, what does that pattern tell you about the future boundaries of military engagement? Not just here, but maybe globally. We're seeing the sustained, effective use of remote, asymmetric strikes defining modern conflicts, where fixed infrastructure, maybe hundreds or thousands of miles from any soldier, has become the most valuable and perhaps the most vulnerable target, something to definitely mull over.